bloodshed in Syria on the verge of collapse. Just hours before Tuesday's 6 a.m. deadline for President Bashar al-Assad to pull back his troops from cities and other populated areas, the Syrian strongman is saying, not so fast. Assad is now demanding written guarantees from the opposition, or as he calls them, armed terrorist groups, that they will lay down their arms and stop fighting first. Now, opposition activists, as you might imagine, are scornful. They say Assad's only goal is to undermine the plan while buying more time to stay in power. Now, the violence on the ground, meanwhile, appears to be escalating on both sides. Everyone is blaming the other. One activist group is reporting over 120 killed on Saturday alone. The violence has been escalating. A lot of the violence across the central province of Hama, Homs, Idlib in the northern part of the country. Pretty much wherever you look in Syria, there has been shelling going on. And now there seems to be a new flashpoint. Syrian forces reportedly opened fire across the border. Yes, across the border into Turkey today. Now, that was near a camp for Syrian refugees. So the question we are going to be asking tonight for my guessers is, where is the peace plan in all of this? Is there a way forward that can avert a long and even bloodier conflict? Now, with me to debate those questions tonight here on France 24, we have joining me via satellite, Jasper Mortimer, our very own. He is near the scene of a gunfire battle today, just across the Syrian border in southern Turkey. He'll be with us in just a second. Good evening, Jasper. From Washington, D.C., also via satellite, we have Radwan Ziadeh. He's a spokesperson for the main umbrella opposition group. It's the Syrian National Council, and he is in the U.S. Capitol tonight. Good evening to you, sir. And here with me in the studio, yes, we do have people in the studio as well. We have Ole Solvang of Human Rights Watch, and your group has just come out with a pretty scathing report about the violence on the ground in Syria. We'll be talking to you about that. Finally, from the U.S. Capitol as well, Washington, D.C., David Pollack will be joining us of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Thank you very much for joining us. And just so you all know, watching the show tonight, you can join in, chime in anytime, put in your 2 cents, our Facebook page, join the conversation, and obviously you could directly shoot your cheers and jeers, mostly jeers, I assume, to my Twitter account at DougF24. I'd like our viewers right now and all of us to take a quick look at the ceasefire timetable as it is supposed to stand. And that supposed to is the key term here. Because as you can see, 10th of April, that's tomorrow morning, government forces are supposed to withdraw. 48 hours later, ceasefire implemented, onus being on the opposition at that point. 6 a.m. April 12th, by Thursday, that is, all forms of violence should have stopped on all sides. Not one, not the other, but all sides. And finally, the final political solution. Talks are supposed to begin to try to find the path to peace. And this is proving to be an extremely difficult issue because today we have a new flashpoint as well shaping up. We have reports, and not just reports, much of it has been confirmed, Syrian government forces opening fire across the border into Turkey. There are unconfirmed reports of 2 dead, several injured, including 2 Turkish officials near one of the largest Syrian refugee camps in Turkey in the town of Kilis. We had gun battles there. For more exactly on what has been going on there today, as you know, information hard to get from Syria and from the border near Syria. Let's go directly, Jasper Mortimer, correspondent there. Jasper, as I understand, you are right now right near that refugee camp where this gun battle happened, Kilis. You had a chance today to speak to some of these refugees. Tell me a bit what you were hearing, what they were telling you about what transpired there.
Yeah, Douglas, the refugee camp is just a few kilometers down this road, and behind that is the Turkish-Syrian border. The refugees are pessimistic about the Annan plan and the deadline tomorrow because they believe that Assad would flout it. And they're also cynical about Kofi Annan's visit to the refugee camps here in southern Turkey tomorrow. They say Annan Annan's visit is just going to be a matter of blah blah. The refugees were telling me that to stop the killing, the world must either intervene decisively, as it did in Bosnia or Libya, or it must give the Syrian opposition guns, heavy weapons, so that they can take on President Assad in a fair fight. Another refugee I spoke to said that if Assad ignores the deadline, which looks increasingly likely, then the killings and massacres will go on. And if the world then fails to take action, then the world will be responsible for the deaths.
And Jasper, just a quick follow-up here. Russia and China not likely to be very happy with today's offense. We can assume, I guess, it's not going out on a limb to say that Syria is going to have to pay a price for this.
Certainly. Russia and China have both said that Assad must respect the Kofi Annan deadlines. And if he doesn't, I think Russia and China will become more amenable to what the UN Security Council proposes as a next step. Everybody is saying that the most likely step would be Turkey, with other countries' forces, establishing a safe haven in northern Syria. Now, up until now, Russia and China have adamantly opposed any incursion that could grow into a regime-changing operation, as the Libyan intervention did. If, however, the terms of establishing a safe haven in northern Syria could be so laid down, so circumscribed, that the forces who would protect that safe haven would only protect it and go no further, then perhaps Russia and China would vote for it. Certainly, Russia and China don't want to continue to be seen as acquiescing to the Syrian government's killing machine.
And Jasper, this is a question we will be addressing a little bit later on in the debate, but you were talking about the possibility of safe havens as we see this violence escalating on the ground. Now, many are accusing the Syrian government of simply moving to crush all the opposition, mop it all up before that deadline. Now, Ole Solvang, I'd like to just ask you, Human Rights Watch, you came out with a pretty scathing report today to the extent that there's been dozens, actually over 100, what you call extrajudicial killings. This is members of the opposition, regular civilians, throughout recent weeks and months in towns and cities. Tell us a little bit more about what that report's happening, and has it let up at all in recent days?
Well, what we're describing in the report that we released today is 12 cases of summary executions that we have documented since December and through March this year. And as you mentioned, in these 12 cases, there are more than 100 people who were killed. And what we have documented is that in all of these cases, the government forces and pro-government militias, the so-called Shabiya, killed in cold blood civilians, opposition fighters, but also people who just happened to be in that place by shooting them, in some cases using knives, and other forms of violence. And these are, of course, extremely serious violations, and we've received many more reports, but these are the cases where we've managed to speak to eyewitnesses to these incidents.
I'd like to bring in here Radwan Ziadeh, who's in Washington, D.C. with the Syrian National Council. Have you been, sir, receiving similar reports from your contacts in the field? What have you been hearing? Does Human Rights Watch, does that corroborate what you've been hearing?
We got a report for the last 3 days escalating the violence, the killings, and the slaughtering of the civilians in areas. In the last 2 days, there is massacres in Al-Latamna in the Hama suburbs, and also in Al-Khalidiyya and Homs, both areas. Today, even that's 22 have been slaughtered in Latamna and Hama, where 17 children, 4 women and 4 civilians. And this is everyday reports we got from the activists in the ground. It's clear that the Assad regime step to other step where it's no return. He has to kill each one, even that there is no fighters, there is no free Syrian army in that area, but still believe that those areas who give the support and they have the empathize with the free Syrian army. This is why he have the smallest and to kill everyone. But the way of the violence, especially using slaughtering the activist. Yesterday there is a video leak to the YouTube, which was a very shocking YouTube, where one of the Shabiha or the Assad militias slaughtered one of the activists. He was talking about the Syrian people. This is the way.
I'm sorry, yeah, Radwan, I want to bring in David Pollack in just a second on this, but first I just want to, offer you a counter-argument. The Syrian regime, one of their officials, a member of the parliament, George Jabari, actually said, what he says is that Bashar Assad, the Syrian president, merely trying to protect the public. He's afraid that if the regime withdraws, the opposition will have a vacuum, will be able to rush in and have free reign. Let's listen to what George Jabari actually had to say.
If government forces withdraw from some areas, the armed groups will infiltrate these regions, which will be a threat to public safety. The government must be responsible for the safety of the people.
I want to bring in David Pollack here. David Pollack, we have heard this argument before that, Assad doesn't want to withdraw first, that the opposition, or as he calls them, the armed terrorist gangs, would simply use it as an opportunity to move in to try to gain territory, as he says they're already doing. How do you respond to arguments like that?
Well, I think the first response is that these are not armed terrorists. This is a popular uprising against a bloody, ruthless, vicious dictator. And I think anyone with a fair view of what's been happening in Syria for over a year now cannot escape that conclusion. That's number one. But number two, even on its own terms, the Syrian government has once again demonstrated that it will break every promise and every commitment that it makes, because the Syrian government accepted Annan's proposal, which requires Syria to withdraw its security forces from all of the cities in that country. And now, just as the deadline for that withdrawal approaches tomorrow, all of a sudden, Syrian officials, like the one you just quoted, are saying, no, we are not going to withdraw. We are raising new conditions and new demands and new excuses.
And David Pollack, would you...
So in effect, yes.
I'm sorry, I mean, you just argue essentially, do you think that Assad somehow ever had any intention whatsoever of abiding by this plan? Or was he just trying to, like everyone says, buy some time, waiting for perhaps the type of opposition that he would be willing to negotiate with, to be left?
I don't think he ever had any intention of abiding by the plan. And the proof, as we say, is in the pudding or in the doing. Because every promise that he's made for over a year now, he has systematically broken and actually escalated his violence against his own people. And now again, we see the Syrian government making new excuses, raising new demands. It's very predictable. In fact, many people, many observers predicted when this plan was first proposed that it would only be a smokescreen for further violence and for Assad's attempt, which I think will fail in the end, to buy more time so that he can savagely repress his own people and hang on to power.
Oli Solvang, I wanna put that question to you. You know, he's buying time, trying to hold on to power right now. There's a collateral issue to this crisis, and that's the refugee crisis, obviously. We have, I think, 24,000 refugees, meanwhile, pouring over that border into Turkey. And I think a third of them have arrived in the past couple of weeks, actually. You see this crisis, I would assume, Human Rights Watch, getting a lot worse before it gets any better.
Well, I think it is very difficult to get into any predictions, but what we have seen over the last couple of months is that it has been getting worse, and particularly since the government forces, launched into a greater military offensive, particularly against the Baba Amro neighborhood in Homs, and then against Idlib, and then against the Jabal al-Zawiya mountain region in the north as well. We've seen an increase in the violence and an increase in the violations, and we've seen new violations taking place. We've seen the Syrian army using landmines again. We've seen the Syrian army using human shields. And we've seen now in some of the cases that we have documented and published today, the execution of opposition fighters. In one case, for example, in Idlib city on March 11, as the forces were invading the city, they dropped a shell on opposition fighters, killing some and wounded others, and then moved in and executed those who were still alive but wounded.
And once again, these are from reports from your contacts, your network on the ground there.
These are, this particular incident, we interviewed 2 witnesses independently in Turkey, 2 refugees, who saw the same thing, described this in great detail to us. So this is something that we are confident actually took place.
Radwan Ziadeh, I want to bring you back in. How do you reconcile the fact that a lot of the opposition, especially the Free Syrian Army, the fighters on the ground there in Syria, they say they need help fighting? They're not asking for military intervention necessarily, all of them, but they need help fighting. How do you reconcile that with the Annan peace plan? Is it just not reconcilable?
We have to understand that the Assad regime will never implement the conditions of the Kofi Annan. Just 24 hours before, he asked for written guarantee. Well, this is something impossible to get on the ground. You have to stop the violence from your side. Then the other side, even that the Free Syrian Army announced that they will respect the Kofi Annan plan. What's important right now, the whole Syrian opposition and the Syrian people, they understand that the Assad just trying to buy more time to play on the Kofi Annan plan, and this is why we should not give the Assad more time to kill more Syrian people. Since the Kofi Annan announced his plan, more than 1,000 have been killed. This is why it is important for the international community to move into next step immediately to go to the Security Council. Kofi Annan is supposed to have a Security Council meeting on Thursday to brief the Security Council.
I understand. Briefly, very briefly, your group doesn't want to give any written guarantees. You really say you've lost all trust in Assad and that there's absolutely no need to do that. So basically, this plan is dead in the water.
Who should give the written guarantee? The Assad should give written guarantee to his own people, not to kill his own people. Not the people or the people who are defending themselves give the Assad guarantee not to kill them. This is a funny story to hear from the Assad, that he wants a written guarantee from his own people, not to asking him not to kill them. This is why it's a nonsense, and this is why unfortunately the international community reluctant to do an actions allowed for the Assad. As you mentioned today, for the first time, they opened the fire and crossed the border in Turkey and in Lebanon. Today, one of the reporters, one of the journalists of Al Jadid channel, the new channel in Lebanon, have been killed. Then we have 2 incidents in Turkey and in Lebanon.
Radwan, I'm sorry, I do have to cut in because unfortunately we do right now have to go to a short break. We will be coming back. We will be talking more about the diplomatic consequences of this, the implications after we take a short break, asking where do we go next? Can we salvage this peace plan? You're watching The Debate here on France 24.